All right, I'm going to shut up now and give Alex Newman of the newamericanmagazine.com the floor to talk about the treaty, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and why he thinks they're moving on so many fronts right now. Then we're going to go to Chad, Jim, Kevin, Nate, Leon, and others that are patiently holding. Again, thenewamerican.com. Alex, you've got the floor.
Basically, there's a number of really important treaties that are moving through the process right now that people need to be aware of. Each of them infringes on our sovereignty and on our inalienable God-given rights. I think the Arms Trade Treaty is one of the most important. Article 2 right there basically defines for us that citizens do not have a right to own guns or ammunition or any type of self-defense weapon that's listed in there. Article 3 deals with ammunition. And initially, at least, the treaty mandates that national governments form a registry with the eventual goal of confiscation, because as the treaty explains, the idea is that only authorized state parties should have access to firearms and weaponry. Now, when people think of authorized state parties, I want them to think of, Mugabe in Zimbabwe, Chairman Mao you were talking about before, mass murders, the Sudan's Omar Bashir, genocidal guy, killed a bunch of people in Darfur. So these are the authorized state parties that we're talking about. Kim Jong-un in North Korea, Fidel Castro and Raul Castro in Cuba. These are the people that the UN thinks deserve to have guns. And us citizens, we don't get any guns. And the UN has made that clear for a long time. Like I said before, they recently helped disarm the people of Venezuela, who are, as your listeners probably know, living under a regime that also does not really respect freedom and human rights and God-given rights. So the Arms Trade Treaty, that's a big one. The UN says it's going to go into effect on December 24th. Of course, the Senate has not ratified it, but Obama, as always, is scheming to implement at least parts of it without ratification. Then we have, of course, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is an idea to merge the United States further into these regional building blocks of the New World Order. This one involves the communist dictatorship in Vietnam, for example, and presumably it would eventually expand to include others. Then they're trying to merge the United States with the European Union through the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. People who know anything about the European Union should instantly realize why that's a terrible idea. All of these so-called free trade agreements, one of the things that they do is set up international tribunals that can overrule state law, that can overrule federal law. So basically, we lose our right to govern ourselves. We would be governed by unaccountable international bureaucracies. These have nothing to do with trade. I'm not opposed to free trade. I think free trade is a good thing. But we're not talking about free trade here. We're talking about managed trade, thousands of pages of regulations and international bureaucracy.
We're talking about government. I mean, that's how they set up the EU, was calling it a free trade commonwealth.
That's exactly right. And we have, the North American Free Trade Agreement. The European Union started with the European Free Trade Agreement. So they thought they were going to build the North American Union here. Robert Pastor, the founding father of that idea, he credited the John Birch Society with killing the plan. But as the CFR made clear even recently this year, they still have plans for this big North American super bloc that would basically usurp the sovereignty and the liberties of the people of the United States and Mexico and Canada. But one thing I want to mention about all these treaties, that all sounds like gloom and doom. One thing that needs to become more widely known, treaties are not in and of themselves the supreme law of the land. There's this misconception promoted by the government and by the UN that, the U.S. government signs a treaty, the Senate ratifies it, suddenly whatever it says in that treaty is the law of the land. That's just simply not the case. Thomas Jefferson, the author of the Declaration of Independence, one of the most important founding fathers, he made that absolutely clear in his letters and his writings. Treaties do not supersede the Constitution. They do not grant any new powers to the federal government that weren't granted by the Constitution. And the Supreme Court has agreed with this interpretation as recently as 57 in Reed versus Covert. They said the federal government cannot assume any new powers just by signing a treaty. So, that's really one of the big stumbling blocks here for the globalists. They have to literally distort what the Constitution says to pretend like all these treaties purporting to grant the federal government and the UN all this power are legitimate. They're not legitimate. They're simply not legitimate. It doesn't matter if the Senate ratifies them. The federal government cannot expand its powers with a treaty. The Supreme Court has said so. The Founding Fathers said so. The Constitution says so. And it's very clear. So if we can expose the truth and the facts and the globalists, I see clear skies ahead. We can do a lot of good things. but it's going to require effort from everybody to educate their legislators, educate their congressmen, educate their city council, educate their communities about these facts so that we can avoid the future that these maniacs is a good way to call them, have planned for us.
Introducing Secret 12, the new InfoWars Life vitamin B12 formulation. Most forms of vitamin B12 are highly processed and synthetic and cannot be properly absorbed by the body. That's why for real results, so many are having to turn to painful B12 injections, which are known to have higher absorption rates. Now, InfoWarsLife.com is excited to announce that we can bring you our most bioactive, powerful form of B12 that has been developed with our exclusive perfected process. Secret 12 is a binary of nutramedical grade, bioavailable coenzyme forms of B12, methylcobalamin, the same kind used in B12 injections, and adenosylcobalamin. Secret 12 is simply taken by mouth, right on the tongue, and then swallowed. No needles, no injections. Don't take my word for it. Try it for yourself. Discover the secret. Secret 12. Secure your revolutionary Secret 12 formula right now at InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.